longing for my experience that I chose to abandon to come back here. On the other side, there was this healing and bliss and knowledge, understanding, wisdom, truth, love, beauty, light, and it was all one entity, and I was in it and it was in me, and there was no separation. I was fulfilled in a way I can't explain, and a lot of that came back with me. So when I came back to my life again, I had this extra dose of energy, prana, Holy Spirit, grace, whatever you want to call it, she, that was inside of me alive. And all of my individual sensory perceptions were unified into one sensing of this light energy inside of everything that there is, microphones and cats.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on For Soul Illumination with one of my favorite people, Peter Panagore. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you very much for having me. And you're one of my favorite people, too.
Well, at the last IONS event, I got to actually introduce you. And you were on stage without shoes. You were all dressed nice, but no shoes. And yeah, we have to understand a little bit about Peter. So you guys, Peter is a near-death experiencer and a TV personality and a video personality and an author of several books. Here's one of them. So, Peter, for people that don't know you, could you explain a little bit about your journey? Because I know that's a hard one because it could take the whole time. But my hope is that people will want to follow you after they hear you because your capacity to explain the inexplainable, the ineffable, the sense of consciousness is magnificent. You are a master at it. So maybe if you explained how you got that knowing, that would help people understand.
First, I'm barefoot right now. As I sit here, my feet are bare. And part of the reason why I'm barefoot all the time is because of what's happened to me. I do wear shoes and I live in a cold place and I wear boots but the divine energy of nature kind of comes up through my feet when I'm walking out in the yard. So I'm barefoot a lot because nature speaks to me. So what happened to me? I was a natural born mystic as a child. I had a series of mystical experiences, raised Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox family of faith, but my experience of the divine was entirely different than what was being taught in the churches. Well, not 100% different, but pretty different. And then by the time I got to college, I had a near-death experience my junior year, and I died while ice climbing. I had a very transformative experience of union with the divine and a whole lot of other things. I was dead for apparently on the other side a long time. Not apparently. On the other side, I was dead for a long time. On this side, I don't really know how long I was dead, but I came back an entirely different person. And I I was an English major at the time. I was going to go to graduate school in architecture and join the family business. But after this experience, I became a totally different person. I was like a alien living in this world, hiding out in human clothing, trying to figure out what had happened to me and how to live in this space. And I went to divinity school and I studied mysticism for 3 years. I got ordained to hide inside the church, liberal progressive church up here in New England, in order to practice my Kriya yoga and my deep mystical studies as a scholar and care for people. So I did 18 years as a servant as a community ombudsman who did all sorts of everything. homelessness, food pantry, grieving, all that kind of stuff, all sorts of stuff. And I ended up in television, and now I'm here. So what really happened is that I was transformed interiorly through my near-death experience, and I spent my life in scholarship and learning storytelling, and most importantly, opening deeper and more deeply inside myself to find my way back home again. I went through many years of suicidality and depression, longing for my experience that I chose to abandon to come back here. On the other side, there was this healing and bliss and knowledge, understanding, wisdom, truth, love, beauty, light, and it was all one entity, and I was in it, and it was in me, and there was no separation. I was fulfilled in a way I can't explain, and a lot of that came back with me. So when I came back to my life again, I had this extra dose of energy, prana, Holy Spirit, grace, whatever you want to call it, she, that was inside of me alive. And all of my individual sensory perceptions were unified into one sensing of this light energy inside of everything that there is, microphones and cats, people and statues, everything there was. And in living creatures, it was so extra radiant. And it was radiant inside of me. And I knew that I could see something no one else could. And so I kept my mouth shut about it, and I went on my interior journey. And the community I finally found, the first community of peers that I found, other than these old dead people in the misty and musty old books in the library from ancient mysticism, other than those people at the IANS group, I found a lot of near-death experiencers who also had the same or similar understanding, deep, not in the reasoning, but in the deep understanding of the light and the love that lived inside of them that was visible to me. And that's how we met.
Wonderful. So I wanted to also compliment you on the way that you are able to help people through your language, through your knowledge of the mystical field that we're in, so they can integrate their spiritually transformative experience and use it without fear. I was, as a child, aware of all that is, and again, just zip it up because no one heard or saw or sensed anything I did. And I was afraid they'd drug me or put me away, seriously. So you just get smart, but you're still looking for unconditional love everywhere. And then after several spiritually transformative experiences, I went searching, and that's when I found you to try to articulate it, because I feel it. I still feel it every morning. Every morning you wake up, you're still reintegrating the dream and the expanded view with this corporeal view. And that's one of the reasons I am such a big fan, is that you make it usable or understandable or relatable or fearless, more fearless by your articulation.
Well, thank you. I went through a long silence in my life. I went deep interiorly and intellectually because of the fear of being, well, institutionalized. I didn't want to tell people what I was thinking or experiencing. They'd think I was nuts, and I was smart enough to know that. So I kept my mouth shut, but I worked on my integration. I found that by diving inside myself, I found a strengthening of my relationship to the exterior world, which to me is this transitory, passerby, kind of thin, fragile place. But by going on this journey by myself, I learned a lot along the way. And I am still going through my integration. I went through the period of 20 years of silence, and then I came out and I continued my integration. And then I had a much deeper integration when I finally let go of my attachment to my egoic self after my second NDE. And I didn't make that happen. It kind of is a result of the things that happened. Once that happened, I found that I'm still integrating. It's still a process. Even though I'm not attached anymore, I am ongoing facing new emotions and new experiences, new traumas in the world and my life and using my newfound knowledge to help myself negotiate my way through those crises. But I help other people reflect on their own experience and understand what happened to them and understand the steps along the way. One of the things it talks about in the Upanishads is that the teachers that let me put it this way, the teachers that I had when I was in divinity school were all these old dead mystic people, but there was so much wisdom in the books, not because they had wisdom to share, but because they knew the experience personally. And it wasn't that they were speculating on how it worked. They journeyed the journey, and so they were able to help me on my journey. And that's what we do for each other, because the light is in all of us. And as we help each other on our journeys by helping people understand where they are, having been there ourselves, we strengthen the whole body. Everybody gets stronger by it. So I'm here to help that happen, one person at a time, and in groups, I guess, but one person at a time in particular.
That's perfect, because you are in total service, and you always have been, as far as I know. It isn't just a single solitary journey for knowledge. It's for usable knowledge to help others. And that's why you were doing this. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about this? Because seriously, this is magnificent what you did.
Thank you. That's a collection of 365 2-minute stories from my television show that ran for 15 years, 2 minutes in the morning on a couple of NBC stations in Maine, broadcasting into New Hampshire and a little bit into Canada and other stuff that was related to that. But I had 2 minutes in the morning to tell a sacred, secular story of hope and love and inspiration, to try to be a cultural influencer for my state of Maine on these two NBC stations just before the weather. And now it's time for Reverend Peter Panagore with Daily Devotions. And I never got to say that. That's what the announcers always said. That's a collection of 365 of the 1,700 stories or scripts that I wrote over the 15 years I was doing it. My goal was to bring love, hope, and inspiration on a daily basis to an extraordinarily wide audience of atheists and Buddhists, and Jewish people, Muslims, Christians, shut-ins, agnostics, all sorts of people. My audience was the audience of the TV station. And my goal was to empty myself enough in the writing of it and the speaking of it and the recording of it through the lens and the microphone to convey some of the divine energy the best I could by getting out of the way, so that individuals might, through their TV screen, because what Fred Rogers said was true, that there's a sacred space between the screen and the child, but it's also a sacred space between the speaker and the viewer. And for me, the sacred space is inside me, so I wanted to create a sacred space between us. So that book became a Maine bestseller, and it's still available. It's written, the title 2 Minutes for God was I'm not sure it's the best title for it. It's each one is 2 minutes long, but it's not for God. It is for God if you're a Christian, but if you're a Muslim, it's for Allah. If you're a seeker, it may be for source. The word God there is the common parlance up here in New England among the audience, but it's much bigger than that single word. No name, ineffable, as you said.
Yep. So thank you for sharing about that, because I think I don't know of any other person that's done what you've done. And for you to be able to bring that through every day for years is remarkable, that your connection was like, okay, guys, need it now. Right? I mean, that's awesome. Every day I'm here. What do you want me to do?
That's the way I wrote too. It'd be like
Yeah.
I'd sit down at my desk and be like, okay. But the reason why at least I think that the reason why it's possible is because of self-emptying, non-attachment. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to promote myself. I'm always trying to promote this love above. And that's what happened to me when I came back. I came back with a job, and this job was the beingness itself, not me. And so my whole practice has been this non-attachment. And that's what every time I sat down to write at this desk, no, at this desk over here, I switched desks. But at that desk over there, every time I sat down, I meditated first. But I also collected stories. I was paying attention to the environment around me. But they were always, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Well, I think that happens when you're on task. All sorts of things drop in, and you go, "Oh, that'll work, and that'll work," and you can, and it's almost as synchronicities just show up, because they know the universe knows you're an action taker, so it gives you more.
Yes, yes, yes. And in that book, a lot of the stories are about where I'm from, and they're all true. Okay, so they're 97.9% true, and the rest that's not true, I changed names and locations in order to protect people. So there's a lot of people in there who stories that actually happened, and they always end with each story ends with a prayer for the day. So I'd be in front of the camera and often in my tie and my jacket,
Yeah.
looking like in front of the weather screen, the green screen, and I had a great crew, but I'd be wearing shorts and I'd be in bare feet. I was
Of course.
in the wintertime, I had shoes on in the studio, but I was in bare feet 90% of the time. And my production crew, they were great. And I would read these scripts once a week. I had an hour of studio time and record as many as we could. And then they would edit them and then they would air them. And it was uh, a blessing for me. I was the fifth minister of this. It was the first radio parish church of America. So in 1926, it was the first AM radio show, and it was on Sundays, and it was a church service, and it was associated with this TV station. And pardon me, when the TV station was an AM radio station, it became a TV station. And then I was the fifth guy, and it was a responsibility. I took it as a responsibility to try to bring peace, love, and hope to my community in Maine, which is and has been for a very long time the least churched state in the United States.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
interesting. Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Well, honestly, so much of this is pertinent today as people are trying to figure out how to connect to the higher truth of life and consciousness. And so much of this it's classic. I mean, you really,
Thank you.
really have teaching lessons in a lot of it, and reminders, because all we need is a bunch more reminders to get back connected. But okay, so Peter, I want to ask, because of you have a scholar side and then you have the Peter side, and I like how they combine. Either side can answer about soul, about how you view the soul. And is soul consciousness? Because consciousness is source, God, whatever. But how do you view soul?
It's not so much how I view it as how I experience it.
Okay.
And through that living presence of myself, Yes, consciousness. It's my individual consciousness inhabiting my physical form, but it's not just inhabiting my physical form. It's my and physical form is inhabiting my soul. My soul is much larger than my physical body, but I am and was implanted into here after my first near-death experience. That was part of what happened to me. I I my soul self is like a subset of the totality of consciousness. It's the same as it, but it's a reduction of it. It's sort of like the same quality, but not the same quantity, is a way to think about it. It is a limited form of unlimitedness. But even though because it is a limited form of unlimitedness, it is still connected to the unlimited. It's not separate from it. So my soul, as I've experienced it not only in my NDE but in other mystical experiences, is it's multi-layered. It's not a, it's like a soul level of myself is this part of me that's here and just above me. But beyond this level of myself, there are other more stripped down, closer, more refined, more pure, more open, less limitation in the way levels of my soul self that connect even more deeply with the united union self of the oneness of being. So there's like levels. You could think of it as levels of heaven, or in physics, brains, BRANES, like levels of universes. That in each one of these, I am closer to the infinite and more myself. But as I experience myself here, way down here in this very material, corporeal place, it's become immediately upon my return from death, it became my goal to be myself. And that meant surrendering to my surrendering my attachment to my egoic self through techniques and processes of spiritual practice that proved effective in my case. And that aspect of stepping aside from myself and self-surrender allows my soul self, my consciousness self that inhabits inside of me, to take more room inside of me. So the more I clear away the parts of myself, my lower self, that are inhibitors, the more space my soul has to fill me till there's no differentiation. So I've got a physical form, and I live in a physical world, but the more I empty myself, the more the physical world changes to be like me, or I become like it. And so the consciousness of the larger becomes a aspect of myself.
I agree totally. I'm finding the more that we can release the programs, the fears, the blocks to holding light and love, the more there isn't that there's more available to understand. It's almost like when you were talking about almost concentric circles, and your viewpoint gets expanded. So at one point you're expanded as a child, then as an adult, then and maybe as a community, it expand, as a partnership, then family, then community, and you start to see your decisions and your choices from that expanded view rather than the fearful egoic view. Do you agree?
Yes, and I found the key in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the year after, and the Upanishads as well. And this is speak. Okay, so for all you Christians out there, I was raised in the West in the Christian culture, and I became a Christian minister. But the most valuable tool I found was in Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, and the Upanishads, where the idea of single-mindedness, single-pointedness of the mind is the key to non-attachment to the self, which undermines all of these other problems, fears and jealousies and angers. It undermines all of those things. This one pillar supports all of it. And if that pillar is removed, the whole thing kind of, well, it collapses. So the process of, instead of running after each individual problem in my life, which I do in my like real life. I got to fix this thing and I got to do that thing. But in my spiritual life, instead of running after this emotion and that emotion and this thing I want to detach from, I detach from the foundational aspect of myself. When I detach from the foundational aspect of myself, which is my identity as a human being, the identity that I think that my mind tells me that I am. And when I quiet that down, then there's this natural assertion of my soul that fills that empty space. I don't have to go seeking this. It just comes in these moments of stopping my monkey mind from running. It just fills the space where that was. And in that way, I have found over my lifetime, because this is a long slope. It didn't happen overnight for me. I had to integrate my experiences. I find though that it makes me courageous. I came back with courage anyway, but this makes me. I kept my NDE a secret for 20 years, and I was afraid of being judged. And now I have less to lose, and I've already lost the thing that was in my way of making me fearful about losing. I'm also cautious. Let me just say this. I'm very vocal on YouTube, but in my community where I live, I don't need to talk about it. I just be it. I don't have to like convince people.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference is the joy. When you are in if you're in this world and you're joyful, you're not looking for something else to complain about or something else to criticize or judge other things, and you just are an observer of it. Because I believe that every time you see something, especially if it triggers you, that's a lesson to work on, because there's some attachment to that. Or you couldn't, if you're complaining about someone else, you have that recognition in you. Isn't that, whoever made up this game? My goodness.
Yeah, it's not one that in this state of being I would design myself. Projection. People project all the time. That's a psychological thing that we do. And how do you get around projection? You see yourself for who you are. When you see yourself for who you are, then you see other people for who they are. And that involves seeing the light inside of them, but also involves seeing the flaws inside yourself. The light inside myself and the flaws inside myself, this potent combination of allowing me to love my enemies and not like them, fight against them, but not hate them, still love them. And I'm not saying that academically. I lived that in my professional life, and my personal life too. So it's a powerful way to see the other as an aspect of the divine, is to find it inside yourself. And then once the candle inside you is glowing bright enough, it gets easier to see the candle in others. And when you can see the candle inside of someone else, the light in their eyes, the feeling you have when you're in their presence, when you touch them, that divine energy, well, that's everything there is. You're not just, it sees itself. That's the magic of it. When you see it in another, it's the light seeing itself. When you see it in yourself, it's the light seeing itself. And so the whole goal is look for the light. Look for the light. That's it. Super simple.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So right now we're going through a high, it's competitive and high contrast time period. And I mean, we really haven't taken the pedal off the gas pedal, or the foot off the gas pedal for 4 years. I mean, it's just been wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. See what's not equitable, see what's not in truth, see what's not of love, and make a choice of how you want to walk in the world. And it's really escalating right now. Some of the energy healers and the spiritual healers from international sites are talking about this as a transfiguration time. for humanity, the transformation. This is past having ascension flu. This is where the things burn off so that you can hold more light. Are you finding that in the people that you're working with or that you talk to? Are you finding that or finding that in yourself?
Among my students, there's been good progress in experiencing the presence of the energy, the tingle, the warmth, the light, having transcendent experiences. Yes. As a whole in the world, there's tens of millions of near-death experiencers who are basically science manufactured theonauts who are impacting the world. And we're in a crisis mode. There's nothing like an opportunity to change a culture as when the whole system seems to be crashing down all around us. So I encourage everybody who is a child of light to aim their path within themselves and find their journey home, because when you aim inside yourself, it naturally comes out in the world around us, which is where we connect. Is there an increase in it? I have a funny blindness, Kathy. My strange blindness is that everything radiates this divine glow, and the more I become living in my bubble of heaven, the more everything around me radiates the bubble of light. So I have this sort of meta blindness to the intensity because there's so much of it for me anyway. On individual levels, on person to person, I sense it more strongly in when that person's in an intensity of it. As a planet, I think it's our one hope for all humanity, because historically, we don't have a good track record for equity and kindness and compassion. So it's the one hope we have, and so I'm putting all my hope there. I'm moving toward the light myself and hoping everybody else is too, because if not now, when? Now's the time.
Perfect, perfect. So I'm seeing that more of us are finding each other, just like we found each other through IONS and other groups like that. And that there's it's not the work anymore. It seems like the layers of fear, that you can actually see the construct of this reality and see that the fear virus in the media. I mean,
It
it's
comes from
really visible.
individuals, right?
Yes. Well, we're feeding it, and that's the whole game of it, is how do you get out of that treadmill and get off that track so that you're watching it but not participating in it. And Brad Yates, who does tapping, he just did a thing that he released on Monday, is like how to get away from your phone, the media, and just, go back to I'm okay. I find the blessings in what I've got here. And that's hopefully what this conversation and other conversations, when you feel you're empowered, you're in a totally different space than when you feel victimized by everything. And you can't make good decisions from that victimized place.
No, and the solution for me is it's the same one I was talking about 10 15 minutes ago. The more I go inside myself, the more stable I am in the world. The more I connect with the eye wherein I see God, God sees me, Meister Eckhart, the more I see through that lens, the stronger I am in my own balance and the stronger and more capable I am in the world. And I take my sustenance. I'm impacted by the social and political and environmental changes that we're undergoing now. I'm totally impacted by that in a real way, because my life is, I'm a human being. I'm a human being. How can I not be? But the divine aspect of myself is my soul self is my primary self. And so as I dive more deeply inside again and again and again, the stronger I become, the more more resilient I am in my face, with my face to the world. But in addition to that, you can shut off your phone too, you know. You don't have to get caught up in all the craziness. That's a choice. I choose to spend a lot of my day outside when I can, in nature, not looking at my phone, communing with the bees in the garden kind of thing, because that actually feeds me in a way that I can't get fed through my phone. And that's not to say I don't read the news, I do. Um, but one of the powerful aspects of non-attachment to self, Kundalini awakening, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, where you come to understand that your consciousness is not your body, and not in an intellectual way, but in an experiential way. Well, that gives you a taste of eternity. And the taste of eternity is this much stronger sense of purity and permanence in this world of impurity and impermanence. And by clinging to that aspect, this whole impermanence gets easier to face. When you know that this is not where you're from and not where you're going. Thank God we all get to leave.
Uh, well, I love also you mentioned something about courage before, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that if you could, because that's what we're talking about, practice, creating a practice, which you have to have enough self-love and be courageous enough to pick yourself over all the choices. And then the courage to stand in love during this time, no matter what the reality outside, the chaos. And those of us that are highly sensitive, most near-death experiencers are highly sensitive. And then there's a whole bunch of spiritually transformative people that are highly sensitive. And there's a global consciousness of fear and chaos that even if you're not using your phone, you can wake up in the morning and go, what just happened last night? Or, was there a hurricane, or was there an earthquake? I mean, you can sense it in the field, because when you're expanded, you do sense that. So could you talk a little bit about the courage to stay on track to your mystical advancement?
Yeah, it's not so much courage as it is desperation. Uh, uh, yeah, so when I first came back after my NDE, my first one, and I embarked on this interior journey, it was because I was alone and lost in this world, in this suffering, beautiful hellscape that I like to call it, a beautiful hellscape. I was alone and tormented here. So I found my journey inward gave me the stability to be in the world. And part of being a loving person isn't necessarily uh, ultimate intolerance. I mean, if you're being abused by somebody, you don't tolerate that because you have unconditional love. You get out of the way. You leave. You don't stay in the way of violence. You don't stay in the way of abuse. You step aside from that where you can. And if you can't, then you protect yourself because it's necessary to protect well, especially the innocent people around you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about self-love and come back to this singular one thing, because it isn't so much that I've fallen in love with Peter. Peter's got all sorts of problems. He's got, I've got biological things like everybody. I've got relationship things like everybody. I got problems. There's this great story about the person comes to see the master, and he tells the master all the problems. He's got 44 problems or 43 problems, and the master finally says, I know what your problem is. Because the beggar's like, fix my problem. He says, I know what your problem is. You don't want to have any problems. That's the problem. So the solution to that problem isn't to love my personage, but the solution to that problem is to love my soul self, this eternal nature of myself. And in reconnecting to the higher aspect of myself, that's with whom I am in love. And from that place of being, then that in that stability, it becomes much easier to step out into the world in courage, which comes naturally out of this. the more one is connected to the interior self, it's not foolish courage. It's loving courage. It's benevolent courage. It's kindness courage. It's it's love, compassion, and the courage to uh, stay on the side of the oppressed, stay on the side of those who are innocent, stay on the side of those who can't defend themselves, on the weak. And the Bible talks about the widow and the orphan. And those are representative, those are symbolic of, in that period of time, the weakest members of society. The role of the spiritual person is to be with them. And the courage to do that arises directly out of the connection itself. And the more that the one is connected to it, the stronger one becomes in the world because of this strength. And another biblical thing there, it's you in the Psalms, it's my fortress and my strength, from one of the Psalms. This is my fortress and my strength. I live inside this place. And by living inside this place, when I venture outside this place, I have more capacity because I have this safe hold.
Beautiful. That is so perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I teared up. I mean, it's beautiful, as usual. Calvin Chin has written a book about
I love Calvin.
I do too. About his 6,000 years of remembering his lives. And I love this book. It really opened my eyes. I really had never experienced the ideas that he has. His concept is that the soul has a personality, and those attributes of the personality, those constructs, if you want to say, show up in all these different lifetimes. Do you agree with that?
When I was dead, I saw my oversoul. So I experienced, the reason why I talk about levels of heaven is because I experienced them, not only in my NDE, but in other experiences. But in my NDE, my first one, I was a singular photon entangled with a field of bazillion photons, which was the one consciousness itself. I was outside of that field, but also entangled with it. And below me in the vast void, I saw my oversoul self. It was a lower level of my being, but it was the soul that was incarnating into human life, or more accurately, human life was kind of birthing inside of my soul. And my soul wasn't broken up into each individual life. It was this one long baguette of selfness. I understood that it had its own selfhood. My soul had its own selfhood, which was less than my higher selfhood. And the lives that I was living, because these are all incarnations that I could see, and basically, even though they had been in the past, they were live time for me. And I entered into a couple of them. But my highest self, its primary understanding was union with the divine. My soul self was entangled with all of these lives. And I didn't see how those individual lives impacted my soul self, but I knew that those individual lives weren't me. And I knew that my soul self was somehow, I guess you could say it had personality. And I'm not sure if that's a word I would use, but that's a good enough word for what I'm trying to say. It was a lesser aspect of me that had a substance to it. I'm not sure if that's clear or not, but that's my best attempt.
I think what the reason I liked what Calvin said is that a lot of spiritual masters say that if you clear something in this lifetime, you're clearing your lineage, you're clearing all these lifetimes. So that would mean the personality construct, which might have been your lesson plan for this life, that if you could clear anything that isn't of the highest frequency, that once you clear that in this lifetime, that it could ripple out. So that's what I liked about that.
Well, I can add to that and say that in one of my mystical experiences, in between NDEs, I was retaken by this orb, this intelligent angel and much more powerful than me, and carried up to these levels of heaven. And in each one of these levels of heaven that we entered into, I experienced the ultimate bliss that I'd ever experienced. It was the totality that I'd ever experienced, the greatest union that I had ever had in physical form. And then I would be carried through another level and another level and another level. And in each one of these levels, more of me would peel away. So I would shed like an onion skin and go up to the next level, and that felt like the ultimate. And then the next level, I shed another, and I went up to the next level, and it was just this ongoing shedding of lower levels of my soul self, that were healing my whole self. So I have this sense that I'm still traveling through those levels, that it hasn't stopped. And so the purer, the more clear I become, the further I go. So it seems to me that's relational, I think, to what he says.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, why don't you share, if you would, a little bit about your projects that you have? You've got several books and you've got a movie coming up. And, would you share with the audience and then we'll want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you so they can watch you go, Peter, go.
Thanks, Kathy. So the book over my shoulder, the blue book there, it's an Audible international bestseller, and it was optioned 4 years ago for a feature film. And it's act 2 of a 3-act screenplay. And I had to construct act 1 and act 3 over the last 4 years under the tutelage of these two producers. And I have completed my task. After 4 years, about 2 weeks ago, I sent in my final copy. And on this Friday, I'm going to have the What's Next meeting with the producers to find out what they're going to do. So I'm super excited to have finally completed this portion of it. What's coming up next is, once I have this meeting and understand where we are, I go off to my literary agent and my publisher to write the rest of the chapters for those. Act 1 and Act 3 are part of a larger book, 25 or 27 chapters, and I'm going to try to get a good enough advance and write that book ASAP, because that book has been optioned not only for this current film as Act 1 and Act 3, but also as a sequel and or a streaming series. So I'm working pretty hard at all that stuff. It's going really well. I love creative writing. That's my favorite thing to do. I really super enjoy it. And my teachers have been great these past couple of years, my producers. So that's going on.
That's fabulous. Congratulations.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want people to know that, hopefully there's going to be a whole series of these media opportunities for people to be uplifted with media rather than what's available to watch right now. And I think that's going to come out of all these changes that we're doing right now. So you're right on target timing wise to get your film out. And
seems right.
I've been cheering you along from this side the whole time.
Thank you. It's going great. I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm intentionally aiming at the mass market. I want the mass market because we want to bring as many people to the idea of their own eternal nature as we possibly can, and tell everybody that there are hundreds of millions of near-death experiences and spiritually transformed people sitting right there in the theater with them and all around them, all around the world, and they're not alone. Right. And the whole time we're talking here, so I've got a studio guest with me.
Oh, you've got your squirrel?
A chipmunk. The chipmunk's been like running over my bare feet, like stopping on my bare feet.
Really? Can you bring it up?
No, he's not that friendly. I can't just scoop him up. Oh, he is right here on the desk.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on a second. Let's see if I can. No, hold on.
No peanut, no play. Is he gonna show?
Oh, you caught a glimpse. He doesn't like the camera.
Great,
he doesn't like the
I've
camera.
Heard you talk about him. What's his name? Chippy.
He doesn't have a name.
Chippy.
He has his name. Well, that's his human name. I'm sure he has a chipmunk name, and he hasn't told me.
And you can't pronounce it.
I can't pronounce it anyway.
Um, so for people that want to follow you and learn more from you, what's the best way besides your website? What's the best way for them to connect and get to learn from you?
Well, website's the best place to hook in, but I run a YouTube channel and I explore modern and ancient mysticism and teach uh, Kriya Yoga, centering prayer, and run a community. That's probably the most important thing, community-wise. I run a community on Sunday mornings from around the world of people who've had mystical experiences of all different types from all different ways of doing it. It's a safe place to talk about the things you can't talk about anywhere else.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, you guys, I hope if this is your first introduction to Peter Panagore, that you make this a discovery and are very, very uplifted by this experience. His website is peterpanagore.love. And so I will have it in the description, and want to just thank you for the work you do. Bless you. I'm a part of your cheering section here, and thank you for everything. Your example is going to help so many people rediscover who they really are. Thank
That's what
you.
we're after. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you,
having me.
dear.
Always good to see you and talk to
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you.